Because I remember when I was watching Raw in 1996, and it wasn't very public over here that Vince McMahon was the owner of the WWF. Nobody really knew that. And you came out on an episode of Raw in 1996, and you spoke out about the WWF. You have no loyalty to the World Wrestling Federation, and you were going to bring back Razor Ramon and Diesel. But now, it is, we could just fall it off and go, it's the fake Razor and Diesel. You know, we know how that ended. But for you as a commentator, someone who had legitimately, the stuff that you said that night was true. You had been fired. You had gone through these struggles. For you, how was it doing that on screen and doing it as a character? Because I was watching those shows the other day, and for a couple of weeks, like, the feud of the company is Jim Ross and Vince McMahon. That it's through the whole show, every show. Talk about them pitching that to you and you doing it. Were you happy doing it? And where was it going to go? Was there an original idea?
Well, the thing is, if you're an old school guy like we are, you basically really try to do what's booked for you, even if it's not good. You know, I've called matches and storylines that were just, you know, eye-rolling. Just, oh my God, this is horrible. And you got to try to make some sanity out of it and not insult everybody's intelligence so they emotionally disconnect. If we emotionally disconnect, the more things in our life that we emotionally disconnect from, the less happier we're going to be. You can't go through life benign or everybody's going to live in Geneva, Switzerland, and everyone's going to live in neutrality. There's no neutrality. There's got to be growth. So I just went along with it. I thought the idea of Razor and Diesel was a little absurd. It was a kind of what they were WCW was doing with having Hall and Nash there and them not being identified. That was strategic. That was pretty smart on their part, actually. So you know, I just kind of went along with it. I will tell you that the interview I did was based in truth. I didn't play the role of a angry wrestling announcer. I was an angry wrestling announcer. I was not happy with my illness. You know, somebody would say, well, JR and Cornette did this show and went to it. You know that damn JR didn't smile one time. Well, I'd love to. If I could, I would, I promise you. Like a Cheshire cat. But I can't. My grandchildren, I have an 8th grader and a 5th grader. They've never seen me smile. Now, you could ask their grandma, and she'll say, well, that no-good bastard's never smiled. But the point is that it was cathartic for me to go do this promo. But I wish I'd have known where it was going to go. I don't think any of us knew. It basically was using my voice to facilitate the Razor Diesel angle, and then hopefully that was going to stick. I did my part. I facilitated it, but it didn't stick. It wasn't good creative.
I was on the creative team at that point, right? Now, please don't think I'm taking credit for that idea. I'm about to tell you a story. So at this time, me and Bruce Pritchard would go, it's a long story, which I'll try to cut short, but Bruce and I were supposed to work at his house every day, and then every Wednesday, we'd go over to Vince, and that's back when you used to do TV just once a month, right? So we'd go to Bruce Pritchard's house, and he'd throw the ball and play with his dog, and we'd go to lunch at the pizza place, and I'm like, why aren't we writing TV? He said, we can't do anything without Vince telling us what we're going to do. I said, then why am I here? He said, that way if the phone rings, somebody calls from the office, we're working. All right. So we went to Vince's that week on Wednesday and did whatever the we usually do, which is basically the ceremonial turning into the papers. Here's formats we've done. Thank you, my son. Crumple, throw, boom. Then start all over again. Then I go on the road that weekend because I'm managing Vader. So we're in Oklahoma, I think, as a matter of fact. And I walk in the building 2 days after I've been to Vince's house where we've discussed the following week's television. And all the boys come running up to me. Razor and Diesel are coming back. Razor and Diesel are coming. I said, what are you talking about? It was announced on Livewire this morning, right? The Saturday morning show. Razor and Diesel are coming back. I said, I don't know about this. I don't see how this is possible. Then I find out JR is going to come out, cut the promo, and Razor and Diesel are going to return. And it's going to be, instead of obviously Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, it's going to be poor Glenn Jacobs, who had just gotten over being an evil dentist with bad teeth, and Rick Bogner from Canada, right? Then they tell me, take him over to the studio, get him in the ring, and teach him how to work like Razor and Diesel on a week's notice. So I asked for all the tapes from the studio, right? Hall and Nash, Razor and Diesel, give me all the tapes. And I've told this story before, but with Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, he did a lot of shit. He was a pretty good worker, right? Nash, I'm sorry, it's true. The 6 moves, right? You got the knee in the corner, you got the back elbow, you got the snake eyes, you got the power bomb, the hair flip, I'm counting as a move, right? I'm writing them down on a pad, and I get to 6, and I got no more. And I go to Glenn. I've known Glenn. I started him in Smoky Mountain. Dutch Mantell brought him up to me from Puerto Rico. Anyway, I said, Glenn, this is what I got. He said, oh, f***. So we did the best way. And then, of course, Nash has made mockery of it. Well, I've made a lot of money with those 6 moves. Yes, and that's obviously mass hypnosis to the wrestling promoters that have paid him to do these things. I don't know. Wasn't it Jerry Briscoe when Nash said he was the lowest paid WWF champion in history? Jerry Briscoe said that's because you were the lowest drawing WWF champion in history. But I digress. Anyway, it was doomed. You can't replace characters like that. Vince got up on the side of the bed one day with that idea. We own them, pal. We own these characters. Yeah, but the guy is what makes the gimmick. The gimmick don't make the guy. That's what a lot of these comedy writers don't understand. The guy makes the gimmick don't make the guy. And classic example of that's The Undertaker, greatest gimmick in history of wrestling. Anybody else but Mark Calloway did it, dead.
And, you know, so as we go through this and we go through how WWF is changing, we have their fake Razor Diesel in September, and then on November 4th, 1996, Steve Austin visits the home of Brian Pillman. And Brian Pillman, as you can see on this screen, pulls a gun out on live television, and as it fades to black, you hear a gunshot. And I'm really intrigued to what you think of this, because you are Mr. Wrestling Tradition, and I'm curious.
I was at Vince's dining room table while he and Bruce were talking about it, and was Dip Stain. It's when I say the name, I throw up a little in my mouth. Was Russo involved with that? I think he just maybe got started. But I kept, are you serious? You can't, this is what I sounded like. And yes, it got a lot of attention, but still, when you go down the slippery slope of doing stuff like that, there was a phrase that we used in the business for decades, long before I was around. It's called hot-shotting. Now it's called the Attitude Era. And I'll say this right at the start so we can get it out of the way, hey, we can get a nice whiff of all the right up here at the start. The Attitude Era to me was, I'll be the first Inside the Ropes guest that's ever quoted Charles Dickens. It was...
You absolutely will be.
Yes.
Scott Steiner did not quote Charles Dickens.
The good times and the bad. It was the best of times and the worst of times. You could take the top 10 or 12 talents in the Attitude Era, do the exact same thing with them, would have drawn the same amount of money, saved all the, and I'm not knocking the underneath talent or anybody else on the roster. It's just that you don't need everybody up and down the card to be in an angle every week and promo every week and push the buttons every week. You hot-shotted when a territory was on its ass, when you needed to up the blood or the violence or whatever to get the people back into the product, and then slowly you weaned them off of it and brought it back down. The good promoters knew how to do that, the good bookers. The bad ones just floored it until they hit the wall and the territory went out of business. And unfortunately, you had the guy, Vince was freaked out that he was losing a fight for the first time ever, and you had the other guy that had ADD and wanted everything to be the goddamn Jerry Springer show and was appealing to people that lived in, I don't know if you have trailer parks over here, trashy people, whatever, and just threw everything, we've never recovered from it. Because what do you follow? You can't follow a shooting with a stabbing. They did everything humanly possible that could be done. I'm not saying the main event guys shouldn't have done all those things. They should have been the only ones doing all those things. Sometimes a guy's on the card just to get his ass whipped. And that's if there had been more restraint and they hadn't used 10 years of angles in 2 years, they would have something to follow it. They shot their load and it was done. So the Attitude Era was huge business and has led to a 15-year lull because as everybody who studied the history of wrestling knows, and I'm droning here, every period of hot-shotting was followed by an equally long, if not longer, period of drought if you didn't pull back in time. It didn't take a genius to see this was going to happen, but it did take the opposite of a genius to allow it to happen. So no, I didn't want people to get shot. In TNA, and I'm a big fan of Abyss. He's a great guy, and there you go. And for a big guy like that, he could work, but at one time, around 2008, 2009, they took him off TV for about 6 months because he had bled from every orifice of his body. He had had every bump, he'd taken every bump, had every move done to him. And Jeff said, we gotta just take you off TV, and because how can I miss you if you won't go away? That's another one of my favorite phrases. As a matchmaker, as a promoter, even if you have the biggest star of all time on your card, if you eat steak every day, pretty soon you get bored of steak.
Andre the Giant.
There you go. He was an attraction. He traveled around, only appeared once, twice, world champion, etc. Same thing. Point is, they take Abyss off TV so that they can get some interest back in him. A month after he comes back on TV, he took a bump off the stage in the impact zone onto a table covered with thumbtacks while the table was on fire, setting himself on fire in the process. He comes back after the match. He's bleeding. He's got thumbtacks all over him. He still smells of burnt hair. And he said, "How was it?" I said, "Get away from me. Go pull those thumbtacks out of you." The only other thing we could do with him after that was stick the hand grenade up his ass, pull the pin, draw circles, number the circles, and whoever picks the circle that his spleen lands in gets a free prize, right? And and my friend Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens, right? Everybody thinks I hate him just because I made him the world champion for a year. But we're in Milwaukee one time in front of 435 people. We've got a pay-per-view coming up, internet pay-per-view, one of the ones that actually made it on the air back then. Imagine that. But we're in Milwaukee in front of 435 people. There's a balcony higher than that from the ground. He wants Mark Briscoe to jump off the balcony and splash him through a table in the middle of the ring. I, as the talent coordinator, am supposed to agree to this when A, it could kill both of them, and B, even if they both live, if they're hurt, we got a fucking pay-per-view in New York coming up in 2 weeks. I said, guys, not every match has to be the main event at Starrcade 86. Somebody could be hurt, the pay-per-view, advertising up, because this is also a business. That's why they call it professional wrestling. Oh, we got to do it. And Steen's like, well, we used to be all about these holy moments. That's what sets Ring of Honor apart. I said, no, that's what's going to cripple you by the time you're 35. If you want to, go ahead. And they did it, and everybody lived, thankfully, and went to the pay-per-view. But because we asked him to gear back every once in a while, then I just didn't want anybody to get over. And because we asked him to weigh 250 instead of 280, because he was playing the part of a professional athlete on television. There's a reason I don't get the Brad Pitt parts in the movies, because I don't look like Brad Pitt. But if we want him to be the world champion, lose 30 pounds, trim your beard, wash your gear once in a while. He was an artist that did not like to be with. That's why I somehow hate Kevin Steen. I don't know. That wasn't anything to do with any question you asked, was it?
Nothing. But I think we enjoyed it, right? So, JR, I'm curious about what you think about this next topic. So, the gun thing happens on Raw with Brian Pillman, and then the next pay-per-view is the Survivor Series. And there's that fantastic match with Bret Hart and Steve Austin, which I think we all remember from Survivor Series. But the main event of that night was Psycho Sid and Shawn Michaels for the WWF title. And going into that, Shawn Michaels was the babyface, and he had Jose Lothario by his side. And Sid hits his mentor with a camera, causes a heart attack, in inverted brackets, and beats Shawn, but the crowd are totally on Sid's side. And it seemed at this point that there was a change in of how the fans saw the babyfaces in WWF. Was that something that shocked you when you were calling that pay-per-view, that the fans were so behind Sid, and that Shawn maybe at that point wasn't hitting the mark as the champion?
I think it was an indication that the fans were getting smarter, being more aware, more learned of the genre. And so therefore, if you force feed me somebody, if you put somebody in my face and demand that I like them, I probably am not going to do that. And that's a societal thing. And I also think that all of us that are wrestling fans, and I can't believe there'd be anybody here tonight that was not a wrestling fan, which is a great thing. I have no issues saying I'm still a wrestling fan. So
enjoy your first drink, son, now that you've turned 21.
I think that people in the wrestling business itself, they have trouble understanding how to build a talent. I'll disagree with Corny on one thing. The Attitude Era did have some collateral damage because of all the stuff everybody saw, and you had to kind of hit the reset button. The other thing that happened was that the WWE was unable to create a significant amount of main event level stars after those incumbents of the Attitude Era. So after the Attitude Era elapsed, who were the next great stars? There was one, Cena, and that's it. So the problem is,
wonder who trained that guy.
The problem with that, I knew who signed him. So, point is that, you know, you got the business is built around stars, and it's always going to be that way. And you say, well, how do you tell them somebody's over? When they draw television ratings and they sell tickets at live events. And when you read online that an event is 40% full or 50% full, that means it's 40 or 60% or 50% empty. That ain't cool. So that's kind of that Shawn Michaels thing. I just felt like we were so motivated and so hell-bent on getting him over as our next big baby face to follow in the footsteps of all those great baby faces in the company, the Brunos and the Morales and the Backlunds and you know, Brett and Randy and Hogan, Austin, all those guys, later Austin. But Shawn was going to be our guy. But I think we tried a little too hard to get him over, and I think there was a little pushback. Because, again, there was an information flow. If it was back in my days when I was a kid or young as some of you guys are, it probably wouldn't have bothered me. But now when I can read about it, the newsletters, the internet, all that stuff, there's a lot of information flow. So to force feed somebody is just it's not good business.
And also it may have been that all the fans met Shawn individually, personally, and found out what a flaming uncircumcised he really was. And also the fact that it was supposed to be with Jose, just real quick, it was supposed to be Rocky and Mickey, Burgess Meredith, his trainer, that would have the heart attack and they'd come back because the Alamo Dome in January of '97 was going to be the Royal Rumble where Shawn would come back and get revenge for Jose. But the problem was Shawn didn't want Jose around. Shawn talked to him like a dog. Shawn wouldn't even look at him when they got in the ring, and there was no bond of love between the two of them that the fans could see. It was only this old guy that most of them didn't know who the he was, following Shawn around, who wouldn't look at him and treated him like a puppy, was trying to run around and get scraps from him. So the whole thing didn't work because Shawn didn't want it to work because he wanted to go out there and shake his dick in people's face. Basically. Just my opinion. Not that there's any truth to it.
So Thank you for not changing as a person.